Tuesday continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. The Health Department says the COVID-19 situation in the country remains very fragile, despite seeing a plateau in coronavirus cases nationwide over the past weeks. To discuss this and other issues raised during today's health briefing, we have Jen Calimon now reporting to us live from Malabon. Good afternoon, Jen. So could you tell us why the DOH made these pronouncements about the COVID-19 situation in the country?
Yes, Charles. Yusek Maria Rosario Vergere attributed the plateauing number of cases in the government's effort to intensify our border control and implementing safety protocols. However, as you said, Charles, our situation is still very fragile. Thus, we cannot be complacent. Yusek Vergere warns that though no local transmission of the Delta variant has been reported in the country yet, these warrants of concerns might be able to penetrate our country anytime. And so we must buy time and prepare in case that will happen in the future. We should still do better in our prevention, detection, isolation, and treatment responses and adhere to the minimum public health standards to prevent the further transmission of these variants of concern. Charles?
Jen, I understand that there is a marked increase in cases in Central Visayas. What are authorities saying about this? And more importantly, how is the national government dealing with it?
According to Yusek Vergere, they have sequenced variant concerns in Central Visayas. But she said that we also have to bear in mind that warrants of concerns are just some of the major factors whenever there is an increase in the number of cases. We also have to consider the mobility of the people, their compliance with the minimum public health standards, safety protocols being implemented in workplaces, and also our border control. So all of these contribute to the increase in cases. The DOH is now coordinating with Central Visayas regarding this spike in cases, particularly in Cebu City and Cebu Province. Charles?
Right, Jen, let's talk about the possible use of booster shots against COVID-19. How close are we, or are we any closer to having this as a policy?
Well, Charles, the DOH is still not recommending booster shots, even vaccine mix and match, because we need more sufficient data and studies to prove that booster shots are indeed safe and effective. Hopefully, Charles, by the end of this quarter, studies from other countries would come out, and probably we can adopt new policies on using booster shots. But for now, again, the DOH is not recommending it. Charles?
Right, Jen, let's shift on over to the Delta variant for a minute. Could you tell us why the DOH is not recommending further travel ban to more countries where the Delta variant is present?
You're right, Charles. Yusek Vergere said, whenever we issue travel bans, we also have to consider the overall impact of these bans in our country. We cannot isolate our country from the rest of the world with warrants of concern because we have our kababayans from other countries which we cannot bar from entering our country. And the solution, therefore, is intensified border control, which they say is an effective tool because we were able to identify people with Delta variant. And so far, again, no local transmission of the Delta variant has been reported in the country. Charles?
Jen, based on what the authorities are saying and based on current numbers, will Metro Manila be finally downgraded to regular GCQ classification anytime soon?
Well, you know what, Charles? This is a matter of discussion according to the Health Department, and it is not for them to decide. It's actually the mandate of the IATF. But Vergere said if we will strictly comply with the minimum public health standards, then we can gradually transition to a new normal, and we can possibly have a better and happy Christmas. On the other hand, the agency is also preparing for their analytics group wherein they discuss these possibilities with the economic cluster. Charles?
Right. Jen, one last question before I let you go. Now that children aged 5 and up are allowed to go outdoors, is there a renewed push for the resumption of face-to-face classes?
Well, Charles, the Department of Health talked with some experts and officials from the Department of Education regarding allowing 5 years old and up outdoors because they recognized that these lockdowns have affected a child's physical, mental, and overall development. And this initiative is also in preparation once we finally start the conduct of face-to-face classes, which the DOH will recommend to the IATF once our COVID situation and vaccination program in the country improve. Charles?
Thank you for those updates, Jen. That was Jen Calimon reporting live from Malabon. The Interior Department assures the public that no one will be arrested when children are caught violating protocols outside their homes. On One News's agenda, Undersecretary Epimaco Dinsing says authorities will only call out children in public spaces to ensure that they are practicing minimum public health standards. Recall that the IATF has allowed children in GCQ and MGCQ areas to leave their homes, but still subject to a few restrictions.
So yun lang naman po ang titingnan nila dyan. Hindi po tayo magkakahulihan, but it's more on pag nagkadikit-dikit na, sisitahin lang sila ng ating kapulisan, and including those barangay officials or barangay tanods.
On vaccinations, Dinsing noted that the government's goal is to put up to 95% of the country's vaccinated individuals in its central database. Dinsing also said that they are targeting to upload at least 90% of the data into the country's vaccination information management system by August 9.
Hopefully by August 9, some of the countries will also recognize this vaccine certification. So medyo na-delay lang because again, yung local government natin at the time did not assign any individual or a senior encoder whose job is simply to encode all the data of the vaccinee. So ngayon, fast track na tayo and hopefully we'll reach 50% uploading of this data by next week.
The World Health Organization says that booster shots in rich nations should not be recommended unless all countries have had equitable access to vaccines. However, its chief scientist notes that exceptions can be made for those with underlying conditions. More details on Bloomberg Surveillance Early Edition.
Doctor, do we need boosters actually in the fall? And how do developed nations square that with only 10% of the developing nations even having gone through their first shot?
As you rightly said, we at the WHO are focused on trying to get 10% of every country's population vaccinated and protected by the end of September. That's within the next 90 days, and 40% by the end of the year in every country. We don't want to see some countries with, getting close to 70, 80%, and somewhere not even 2%, not even the frontline workers are vaccinated. The need for boosters, depends on the science, and the science, of course, is evolving. What is encouraging is that many studies now are showing that immunity seems to last quite long after a course of vaccination. It seems to last for 8 months. There are some data now up to 12 months where people have been followed up in the vaccine trials, and you have both the antibody responses as well as what we call the cell-mediated or T-cell responses. So it does appear that immunity could be long-lasting and that we may not need a yearly booster. On the other hand, there may be subgroups of people, the elderly, for example, or those who have other underlying diseases, immunosuppressed people who cannot mount an immune response, who may need more frequent boosters. And there are going to be now studies, I think, happening to look at what happens over a period of time, both in people who do not receive a booster and perhaps in some who do. So again, there's no clear evidence at this point that we're all going to need boosters, which is a very good thing. But right now, the focus is let's get people vaccinated, those who haven't had their first course.
How do you feel about governments actually offering rewards for people to get vaccinated? Is that a slippery slope?
Well, again, it makes me sad because there are countries where people are waiting, are really dying, in fact, are waiting for the vaccines. And there are other countries where people are being given all sorts of incentives and gifts. We're not against that in the sense that you have to do what you need to do to get that vaccine coverage rates up, because that's what's going to reduce transmission, really bring this virus down where it's not having an impact on society. But, we need to understand what's driving either a lack of enthusiasm or hesitancy. In some cases, it's just practical things like, just getting vaccines close to people, making it easier, getting friends or relatives or a helper to come and help you if you're not able to go yourself to the vaccine center, providing that additional bit of information, answering the questions that people might have. In many cases, I think it's those things, and it varies from place to place. It's very contextual. We know that there is vaccine hesitancy, there are conspiracy theories, etc. But in the majority of people, I think they have some questions that need to be answered, and perhaps some incentives, some practical things that make them, come forward. But again, there are large populations that are waiting waiting to get vaccines, and so that's where then we start seeing these inequities.
Baguio City is already seeing an influx of visitors shortly after waiving the RT-PCR test requirement for fully vaccinated tourists. Laila Pangilinan with the details.
Baguio City's first weekend after waiving the swab test requirements for fully vaccinated travelers went well, as tourists and locals alike flocked to Session Road. Meanwhile, over at Wright Park, some tourists took a stroll and rode horses with their kids. Horse owners say they earn mostly during weekends, which is why they look forward to more tourists riding horses soon.
Pas ganito, paulit-ulit na Sabado-Linggo, nagiging okay na siya. Pagka karamihan ng tao, maabot ng 3,000 talaga, magpataas lang sa amin. Pag walang tao, sorry na lang.
This is the first time that Colleen and her kids got to enjoy the city of Pines as a complete family after the series of lockdowns in Cavite since the pandemic began.
Importante yun kasi sa development nila kailangan ng interaction talaga.
Since Colleen is fully vaccinated, swabbing was waived and her vaccination card sufficed as her passport to the city. Jay, on the other hand, still opted to get swabbed despite him being fully vaccinated. But he admits that presenting your vaccination card to enter the city is more convenient.
It will encourage tourism and it will encourage more visitors na talagang lumabas at bumisita sa Baguio kung pakiramdam nila ay safe naman sila dahil fully vaccinated.
Parks like Mines View can already feel the surge of tourists since last month. From 300 visitors a day from April and May, they now accommodate 1,000 visitors per day. Meanwhile, Jezreel took a quick getaway from Valenzuela to the city of Pines with his kids who haven't been out since last year.
Excited sila lahat. Excited kasi first time nga nila makalabas ulit.
Children are not required to get swabbed if you plan to take them along with you to Baguio. Pasalubong shops near Mines View Park are slowly picking up on sales as well.
Medyo malakas na rin konti. Hindi kagaya dati. Mas dadami ang kita at umakyat na yung mga bisita dito, yung mga foreigner.
Strawberry vendors are also open to the idea of fully vaccinated tourists no longer being required to get swabbed, as they pose a low threat of spreading the virus. This would also mean more people going up to Baguio to buy goods, a better alternative than the goods just getting spoiled.
May tapon po. Ay, yung iba, yung mga ganito, yung mga na-expired na, talagang maitapon na. Pero yung mga ganito, iluto siyang yung ganyan po, strawberry jam.
But for Baguio residents, 3,000 tourists a day is just the right number so that the city can still function for both tourists and residents.
Kailangan rin kasi natin i-open yung place natin para sa mga tourists kasi syempre kailangan para sa economy din ng Baguio. Mas maganda na limited pa rin para at least parang controlled ba? Controlled yung yung population ng Baguio, so hindi masyadong congested.
A few reminders for fully vaccinated tourists who plan to visit Baguio soon. You must register at the Baguio Visita page at least a day before and secure a QTP code or a QR-coded tourist pass before entering the city. No QTP, no entry. For News 5, Laila Pangilinan. We are One News.
World number 1 Novak Djokovic beat Italian 7th seed Matteo Berrettini to win his 6th title at Wimbledon. Noel's 3rd straight triumph at the All England Club also earned him a 20th Grand Slam title, equaling the men's record haul of Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal. A single break of serve in the 3rd and 2 more breaks in the 4th were enough for the 34-year-old to close out the contest in the center court crowd who kept on chanting the Italian underdog's name. Djokovic then sealed his place in the record books on his 3rd match point when Berrettini's backhand slice landed in the net. Having also won the Australian and French Open titles in 2021, Djokovic only needs to win the US Open to become the first man since Rod Laver in 1969 to complete the calendar slam. And those are the top stories at this hour. Join us again later at 2 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.